As humans, we're social animals. Who we are and what we want from life is formed by other people, which is a weird thing to think about because we are around the people that are around us, so we help form the people who help form us. It gives me the chicken and egg vibe. Anyway, I expect nobody is surprised by that. But once we start looking into some hypotheticals and reflect on our lives in that context, that's when things start getting interesting. Here is a hypothetical scenario. Let's look at a fictional kid named Willem, or Billy for short. If I asked you, what does Billy enjoy doing? Or what are Billy's grades at school? Or what do you reckon Billy will end up doing for a living? What would you answer? I imagine most people would say, I have no clue to all those questions. You don't know anything about Billy after all. But if I told you that Billy regularly attends violin lessons, would you then have more of an inclination of what he enjoys doing? Realistically, probably not. Are his parents forcing him to attend those lessons because they want him to become a renowned musician? If so, maybe he hates it. But maybe his teacher is kind, understanding, and skilled, and they managed to help Billy find the magic in music. So even though his parents forced him to take lessons, he still quite enjoys playing the violin. Or maybe the whole thing was Billy's idea. Maybe Jessica, the girl from school he fancies, also plays the violin. So Billy wanted to learn because he hoped it would bring him closer to Jessica. And maybe it did, and they played together, and Billy started connecting playing the violin with good memories and good feelings, so he loves playing it. But maybe his plan didn't work out. Maybe he embarrassed himself in front of Jessica by doing a poor job at the violin, and now he doesn't want to touch the instrument. One last example. Perhaps Billy moved schools, and in his previous school, it was mandatory for every student to pick an instrument and learn it. Billy randomly chose the violin, and it turns out he has a knack for it, so he was praised by his music teacher, and the other kids at school were impressed by how good he is. So now Billy really likes playing the violin, and because there's no such program in the new school Billy moved to, he started attending private lessons. Notice how in all of those examples, whether Billy likes or dislikes the violin depends on the people around him. You might be thinking that, hey, maybe Billy just likes the violin because he likes the violin. And certainly, things in life sometimes feel that way. But in my experience, there was always some social incentive in the past. What about Billy's grades? Perhaps Billy's parents are going through a divorce, and not in a good way. So it weighs a lot on Billy, and now his grades suffer from it. Or perhaps Billy sat next to one of the smart kids. They started talking, they started hanging out together, and now Billy is part of the smart kids group. His grades are probably doing fine given those circumstances, wouldn't you say? And if his grades weren't good for whatever reason, maybe the smart kids made fun of Billy. Or maybe Billy felt guilty that he couldn't keep up with his peers. Maybe something else happened and he went to another group and tried to integrate there. And now he's a skater. Which on itself has no bearing on Billy's grades. But now we can see how other people can push Billy to become a skater. And maybe the other skaters like to get high. So now Billy smokes weed as well. Or maybe there's a skating event in town which inspires some of his peers. Or maybe even himself. And now Billy is trying to make skating a profession. Which goes into the last question about Billy that I posed. What do you reckon he'll end up doing for a living? Well, maybe he became a professional skater. Or maybe his peers needed someone to make videos of them skating for whatever reason. Maybe some sort of audition. And everyone liked Billy's videos. That's social reinforcement. So now Billy is a professional editor who enjoys skating in his spare time. Or maybe Billy never got into skating because he was the smart kid. From his parents, you see, in this hypothetical scenario, they are scientists and they have instilled in Billy scientific curiosity from an early age. And they also helped him with his studies and provided positive reinforcement when he did well academically. In which case, Billy will probably end up doing whatever scientific discipline he gets nudged towards. And maybe his parents own an agricultural business and they've been preparing him to take over from an early age. If he does end up doing that, would you say it's a coincidence? Here's an anecdote about a real person. Apparently, there's this sand tiles guy who is the sand tiles guy. I don't remember what country that was, but he's earning a fantastic living off of installing sand tiles for people. And he's very good at it, and he seems to be enjoying his craft quite a bit. Now, do you reckon this person would enjoy working with sand tiles as much as he does if he didn't raise his social status? Here's how I make sense of why it works like that. If we look at evolutionary psychology, us humans evolved in tribes as social animals. Back in the ancient days, a lone human was a dead human. So it was imperative to our survival that we be part of a tribe. That's why we value so much what other people think about us. If we need sharp sticks to go hunt, and I sharpen a bunch of sticks, and everyone is happy and appreciates my work, that means I have provided value to the tribe, and I'm not likely to end up alone and then dead. Meaning, wanting to sharpen more sticks has suddenly become a survival mechanism for me. On the flip side, if I were to grunt while stalking a prey for some weird reason, the other hunters would probably shush me and express general unhappiness with what I'm doing, which will likely evoke shame in me, which will force me to try and not grunt when trying to be quiet in the future. A silly example, but here it is. Now the fun part. We have disentangled some of Billy's superpositions. We have gone back in time in search of the root cause. But what about now? What about us? Of course, I don't know you. I can't speak for your experiences or your motivations to do whatever it is you do. It might be an interesting thought experiment to try and figure out where your interests come from when considering the influences of other people. I would be interested in your findings if you feel like sharing. This is where I should be telling you about the things that I find meaning in and how that meaning comes from some event in the past where people appreciated whatever it is I did. But I don't really find meaning in anything I do. Which is why I would like to talk about the other side of all this. Namely, the things that we don't do because there is no social reinforcement. Let's say we do something that provides us with dopamine. That's motivation to keep doing the thing. But is there meaning in that, and why does that matter? I don't want to use YouTube as an example on a YouTube video, but YouTube does provide good stats, so I will use it as an example. Let's say you really enjoy playing video games. That's your dopaminergic activity of choice, and you want to do something related to video games because there isn't really anything else you enjoy doing, and of your options you decide to go with making YouTube videos. Maybe you hope to one day become a financially stable streamer/YouTuber, and let's say you start with motivation. Motivation is really good for kickstarting something, but it's really bad for sustained effort. It wanes way too fast and there is no reliable way to replenish it. So you churn out a few videos and then you run out of motivation. Here's where the social animal aspect comes into play. The way I see it, there are two things that can keep you going in that situation. First is a measure of success. If people watch your videos and post comments and they seem to be enjoying your content, that can keep you going. Social reinforcement. Your fellow tribespeople showing you that your efforts are appreciated. Ancient wiring kicks in and you want to do more. But what if that's not the case? Which is the more likely scenario according to statistics. Very few people click on your videos and YouTube tells you they leave after a few seconds. No comments. No social reinforcement of any kind. The other thing that can keep you going in that case is doing the thing with someone else. That way, when one of you is feeling demoralized, even if the other person is also feeling the same way, each of you can find the drive to do the work for the other person. Helping a fellow tribesperson. We're social animals, that's how it works. This may be a bit of an aside, but there's been studies which show that helping other people makes us feel good. We are wired to enjoy helping others. It's actually among the best things you can do to help yourself feel good when you're feeling down. Help someone else. You could say that showing your work, in this case your YouTube videos, to friends and family who will provide positive reinforcement can also serve as fuel. That may be so, unless they're just saying it and you can see that. I think the important part is that you feel whatever you do provides value to others. That can keep you going. But what if you don't have either of those two things? Positive reinforcement from your work or a buddy to share the burden with? Let's say no social life either, just to round the corner. Remove all options I can think of. That way you can't get into something new that you can potentially derive meaning from without ending up in the same situation. Because chances are, when you are just getting started, you will not provide value to anyone. And without social circle, you'd be diving in alone. Maybe the initial burst of motivation will carry you far enough, but that is statistically extremely unlikely. What happens if you're in that situation? How do you make something of your life that you can be proud of? Where do you get your meaning and satisfaction from? The straightforward answer from nature is make babies. Now, it's a different question how good of a parent someone would be if the only reason they conceived a child is because they felt deep dissatisfaction from life. I reckon that's the sort of person who would name their son William and force him to learn the violin so he can one day become a renowned musician. See? I made a circle back to the Billy hypothetical. That's my takeaway. Having no people around you can leave you directionless. I wish I could offer you a solution that didn't require the conception and raising of a new human being, especially given how difficult it is for the modern day person to find and maintain a relationship. And it's also a massive financial burden. I suppose if you find yourself in that situation, and we assume I'm onto something with my analysis, at least you know the root cause now. Maybe you can work on fixing that. Volunteering is something I hear suggested by people quite a bit, and expanding your social network is bound to be useful as well. And of course, there's the other fuel that's not motivation: discipline. If you can logically choose a path to pursue, then craft a routine and stick to it, well, you get somewhere. Presumably, if you succeed in that endeavor, the sense of meaning will come with the success. You get your sound styles. You just need to ride out the tough parts, hence the need for discipline. Naturally, a skilled therapist will be way more useful than a random YouTube video. You can look into that as well. Anyway, Billy found love and lived happily ever after. Now we have a happy ending.